I'm Hazel Mitchell, 34. And last month I opened my mailbox to find a wedding invitation that shattered the silence of years. My sister Stephanie, the golden child who I hadn't spoken to in nearly a decade, was getting married, and suddenly my family remembered I existed. After years of being invisible, they demanded my presence for appearance's sake. What they didn't expect was my refusal, or how quickly their perfect facade would crumble because of it. I built a beautiful life from the ashes of rejection, and I wasn't about to burn it down for people who only wanted me when it was convenient. Before I share how it all unfolded, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button to join our community of survivors and thrivers. Growing up in Portland, Oregon in the 1990s should have been idyllic. Our neighborhood had tree-lined streets, good schools, and families who gathered for summer barbecues. From the outside, the Mitchell family looked picture-perfect. Mother Kimberly with her immaculate home and PTA leadership position, Father Jason with his steady accounting job and weekend golf games, and 2 daughters 3 years apart. But appearances can be deceiving, and behind our freshly painted front door was a household divided by favoritism so blatant it shaped my entire childhood. The disparity between how my parents treated Stephanie and me wasn't subtle. My earliest memory of feeling less than came on my 6th birthday. Mom had promised a small party with a few friends from kindergarten. The morning of my birthday, she announced we'd need to keep it quick, because Stephanie had a playdate that afternoon that couldn't be rescheduled. My party was rushed through in under an hour. My friends confused as they were hurried out the door before we'd even finished cake. 3 months later, when Stephanie turned 3, our house transformed into a princess wonderland for an elaborate celebration that lasted all day, complete with a hired entertainer and personalized party favors. This pattern repeated itself throughout our childhood. Christmas mornings meant Stephanie receiving the coveted toys she'd asked for, while I received practical items like clothes or school supplies. When I brought home straight A's, my father would nod and say, "That's expected." When Stephanie brought home B's and C's, there would be celebratory ice cream trips for her improvement. The message was clear. My achievements were obligations, hers were triumphs. "Hazel is so independent," my mother would tell her friends within my earshot, as though my self-reliance was innate rather than forced by necessity. The truth was, I'd learned early that asking for help meant being told to figure it out myself, while Stephanie received guidance for the smallest challenges. By 10, I was making my own school lunches and helping with laundry. Stephanie, at 7, still had her sandwiches cut into heart shapes by our mother. I tried everything to gain their approval. I joined the math team and the debate club, thinking academic excellence might finally earn their attention. I won regional competitions and saw my name in the local paper, but my trophies were relegated to my bedroom shelves, while Stephanie's participation ribbons from dance recitals were displayed prominently in the living room. The most glaring example of their priorities came during my high school graduation. As valedictorian, I would be giving a speech I'd worked on for weeks. The night before, my parents informed me they wouldn't be attending. Stephanie, then a freshman, had a dance recital the same afternoon that they couldn't miss. "You'll be fine without us," my mother said, not meeting my eyes. "You always are." I sat on the stage the next day, scanning the audience for faces that wouldn't appear, delivering my speech to a crowd of strangers while my classmates had cheering sections of proud relatives. My guidance counselor, Mrs. Wilson, noticed and gave me a bouquet that I pretended came from my family. The pity in her eyes was almost worse than my parents' absence. The only person who ever made me feel valued was my grandmother Grace, my father's mother. She lived across town in a small apartment filled with books and the smell of cinnamon. Every Sunday, I would escape to her home while my parents took Stephanie to her various activities. Grandma Grace would listen to my stories, help with homework, and tell me I was extraordinary. She never understood why her son and daughter-in-law treated me differently, and she wasn't afraid to question them about it, which only made them limit her access to both of us. "Some people aren't capable of seeing clearly what's right in front of them," she told me once. "That doesn't mean what's in front of them isn't valuable. It means their vision is poor." When I was 16, Grandma Grace passed away unexpectedly from a stroke. At her funeral, I stood apart from my family, grieving not only her loss but the loss of the only person who had truly seen me. With her gone, I was completely alone within my family unit, invisible except when needed for practical purposes or family photographs. That same year, I began applying to colleges, exclusively to schools on the opposite coast. Boston University offered me a substantial scholarship, and I accepted immediately, counting down the days until I could escape the daily reminder of my secondary status. My parents seemed almost relieved when I announced I'd be moving across the country. They helped with the logistics in a detached, efficient manner, and when they dropped me at the airport, my mother's parting words were, "Make sure to call your sister sometimes. She'll miss you." I boarded the plane with a carry-on full of clothes and a heart full of hurt, but also with a flicker of hope that 3,000 miles might be far enough to start fresh, to find people who might actually want me around. As the plane took off, I made a promise to myself that I would build a life where I was valued, even if it had to be a life without the family I was born into. Boston University's campus was a revelation after the tension of home. The red brick buildings and autumn leaves created a postcard-perfect setting for my reinvention. For the first time, I could define myself without the shadow of Stephanie's golden child status looming over me. No one here knew us as a pair, with me as the lesser half. In Boston, I was just Hazel, a fresh start. My freshman dorm assignment paired me with Alicia Carter, an art major from Chicago with an infectious laugh and zero tolerance for pretense. The first night, as we unpacked our belongings in our cramped room, she noticed me carefully arranging my textbooks 5 days before classes started. "Planning to read ahead on everything?" she asked, hanging a vibrant tapestry on her side of the room. "I like to be prepared," I replied, the defensive edge in my voice a reflexive protection against expected ridicule. Instead of mockery, Alicia nodded thoughtfully. "That's smart. I'm more of a figure-it-out-when-I-get-there person, but maybe some of your planning will rub off on me." She extended a candy bar in my direction. "Peace offering to start our roommate journey?" That simple gesture, the acknowledgement of my approach as valid rather than excessive, the casual sharing of food without obligation, was the beginning of my first real friendship. Over late-night study sessions and weekend explorations of Boston, Alicia became the sister I'd never really had with Stephanie. She noticed when I was quiet, asked meaningful questions, and remembered the details of what I shared. These basic kindnesses felt revolutionary after 18 years of being forgettable. Academically, I thrived. Computer science challenged me in ways that made me feel alive rather than merely adequate. I secured a work-study position in the technology department during my first semester, which evolved into a paid role by sophomore year. Between my scholarship, part-time work, and careful budgeting, I managed without asking my parents for money, a point of pride that also served as a buffer against their potential control. Calls home were infrequent and followed a predictable pattern. I would share news about classes or internship applications, only to have the conversation quickly redirected to Stephanie's latest achievements. "That's nice, Hazel. Did we tell you Stephanie was nominated for homecoming court?" Or, "That sounds interesting, but you'll never believe what opportunity Stephanie just got." I learned to time these calls between assignments when I could half listen while coding, my attention divided between family obligation and actual productivity. During my junior year, I secured a coveted internship with a tech startup that specialized in healthcare software. The position came with the possibility of post-graduation employment, and for the first time, I could envision a clear path forward that had nothing to do with seeking parental approval. I called home with the news, allowing myself a moment of optimism that this tangible success might finally register. My mother answered with distracted hums before interrupting. "That's nice, honey, but we're in the middle of helping Stephanie prepare her transfer application to UCLA. Their theater program is extremely competitive, you know. Can we call you back later?" They didn't call back. I stopped expecting them to. Then came the accident during winter break of my senior year. I had stayed in Boston to work on my senior project and pick up extra hours at my internship. One icy January evening while crossing Commonwealth Avenue, a car skidded through a red light. I remember the screech of tires, a flash of headlights, then nothing until I woke in the hospital with a concussion, 3 broken ribs, and a fractured wrist. Alicia was there when I regained consciousness, her sketchbook abandoned on the chair as she leapt up to call the nurse. She had been notified as my emergency contact. A practical decision I'd made years earlier. Knowing my parents were across the country. Only after the doctors confirmed I was stable did she mention she called my family. They said they'd try to get here, she said carefully, not meeting my eyes. For 3 days I drifted in and out of consciousness in the intensive care unit. Alicia barely left my side, coordinating with my professors and bringing assignments she knew would worry me if missed. My phone remained silent except for a single text from my mother. Just heard about your accident. Hoping you're okay. Stephanie has her UCLA interview this weekend, so we won't be able to come out. Let us know if you need anything. The message arrived while a nurse was checking my vitals. She saw my expression change and patted my uninjured hand. Family coming to help out? I turned my phone screen down on the blanket. No, they're busy. The clarity that comes with morphine and near-death experiences is surprisingly sharp. Lying in that hospital bed, watching Alicia rearrange her entire schedule to care for me while my parents prioritized yet another of Stephanie's opportunities over my actual physical well-being, I finally accepted what I had known intuitively since childhood. I would never be important enough. Not when I achieved, not when I succeeded, not even when I might have died. The day I was discharged, supported by Alicia and moving gingerly with my newly bandaged ribs, I made the call I should have made years earlier. My father answered, sounding distracted. Dad, I said, my voice steady despite the pain medication wearing off. I wanted to let you know I'm out of the hospital. Oh, that's good, he replied, the sound of papers shuffling in the background. Your mother's driving Stephanie to her interview right now. Did you need something? Yes, I said, the word surprisingly easy after years of asking for nothing. I need you to understand something. I was in intensive care for 3 days. The doctors weren't sure if there was internal bleeding. I could have died, and you and Mom chose not to come. The shuffling stopped. Hazel, you know how important this interview is for your sister's future. We couldn't just. I know exactly where I stand, I interrupted, the words pouring out now. I've always known. But I kept hoping it might change. It won't, and that's not something I can keep accepting. I won't be calling anymore, Dad. I won't be coming home for holidays. I'm done trying to be part of a family that has never tried to include me. His response was telling in its brevity. You're being dramatic, Hazel. We'll talk when you're feeling better. But we didn't talk. When my mother called 2 days later, I let it go to voicemail. Her message was a masterclass in missing the point. Hazel, your father said you were upset about us not visiting. You know we would have come if it had been serious. Stephanie's interview went well, by the way. Call us when you're being reasonable again. I deleted the message, blocked their numbers, and focused on healing, both my physical injuries and the long-infected wound of being the least wanted daughter. The wall I built that day would stand unbreached for nearly a decade. Graduation day arrived that May with no family in the audience. Instead, Alicia and 3 other close friends formed my cheering section, complete with embarrassing poster board signs and air horns that earned them stern looks from university staff. When I crossed the stage to receive my computer science degree with highest honors, their whoops and hollers made up for the silence from the seats where parents should have been. The startup where I'd interned offered me a full-time position with a salary that made my eyes widen when I saw the offer letter. For the first time, I allowed myself to splurge on an apartment without roommates. A small studio in Cambridge with a bay window perfect for reading. The space was entirely mine, decorated according to my preferences without compromise. Every item I purchased felt like another brick in the foundation of my independent life. My first few months of professional work confirmed what college had suggested. I had a talent for coding that translated into respect from colleagues. In team meetings, people actually listened when I spoke. My suggestions were implemented, my contributions acknowledged. This basic professional courtesy felt luxurious after years of familial indifference. While coding filled my days, evenings often stretched empty before me. The silence of my apartment, once a welcome relief from dorm noise, began to feel oppressive. On Alicia's recommendation, I started therapy with Dr. Meredith Lang, a specialist in family trauma. Our first session set the tone for what would become a 5-year journey. Tell me about your family, she prompted. Her office warm with soft lighting and plants thriving on every surface. I don't have one, I replied automatically. Her head tilted slightly. Everyone comes from somewhere, Hazel. Biologically, yes. I have parents and a sister in Portland, but they're not my family in any way that matters. Instead of challenging this statement, Dr. Lang simply nodded. Then tell me about the people who are your family in the ways that do matter. This reframing opened something in me. Over weekly sessions, I began unpacking not just the pain of rejection, but the possibility of chosen connection. Dear Lang helped me understand that my hyper-independence, my reflexive, I can handle it myself response to every challenge, was both a strength born of necessity and a barrier to true intimacy. Being self-sufficient kept you safe, she explained during one particularly difficult session. It was adaptive when you couldn't count on your parents. But now it's preventing you from letting people get close enough to show you they're different. Slowly, I began practicing vulnerability with my small circle of friends. I asked for help when I needed it. I admitted when I was struggling. Each time the world didn't collapse. Each time someone actually showed up for me. Another piece of my protective armor loosened. After 2 years at the Boston startup, I received an offer from a major tech company in Seattle. The position represented a significant promotion and an opportunity to work on healthcare software systems that could make a real difference in patient outcomes. The cross-country move was daunting, but the salary increase and chance to start fresh in a new city outweighed my hesitation. Seattle welcomed me with its moody skies and coffee culture. I found an apartment in Queen and with a view of the Space Needle, and threw myself into the challenge of my new role. My team was diverse and collaborative, the work complex enough to keep me engaged for long hours. On weekends, I explored the city's neighborhoods and nearby hiking trails, sending photos to Alicia and my Boston friends through our group chat. 6 months into my Seattle life, the company sent me to a coding conference in Vancouver. During a panel on ethical algorithms in healthcare, I found myself engaged in spirited debate with another attendee, a tall man with glasses and an infectious enthusiasm for data privacy named Tyler Bennett. Our discussion continued through the coffee break and into lunch, where I discovered he also worked in Seattle, for a competing tech firm. I can't believe we had to come to another country to meet when we worked 10 blocks from each other. He laughed as we exchanged contact information. Our first date happened the weekend after the conference, a rainy Saturday spent in the Museum of Pop Culture followed by dinner at a tiny Vietnamese restaurant where the tables were so close together. We had to speak in near whispers. Tyler asked questions and, more importantly, listened to my answers. He shared stories about his close-knit family in Minnesota without making assumptions about my own family situation. When the topic inevitably arose on our third date, I gave him the abbreviated version. My family and I are estranged. It was their choice until it became mine. Tyler nodded, considering this. That must have been difficult. It was, I acknowledged. But it taught me to value people who show up consistently. I'd like to be one of those people, he said simply. And over the next 2 years, he proved it repeatedly, through celebrating my successes, supporting me through work challenges, and creating traditions that were just ours. With Tyler, I learned that love didn't have to be earned through achievement or perfect behavior. It could simply be given, consistently and without conditions. As our relationship deepened, I continued my therapy with Dr. Lang through video sessions. With her guidance, I processed not just the hurt of my family's rejection, but also my fear that any new connection might end the same way. What if I'm fundamentally unlovable? I asked during one particularly raw session. What if there's something wrong with me that my parents saw and Tyler will eventually see too? Hazelder, Lang said gently, children don't come into this world unlovable. They come wired for connection. If your parents couldn't provide that, the deficiency was in them, not in you. This perspective, that perhaps the failure had been in their capacity to love rather than my worthiness to receive it, was revolutionary. Didn't erase the pain, but it shifted something fundamental in how I carried it. By my 3rd year in Seattle, my life had taken solid shape. Tyler and I purchased a craftsman-style home in Ballard that we spent weekends renovating together. My career continued advancing as I was promoted to lead developer. We adopted a rescue dog named Edison who greeted me each evening with unbridled enthusiasm. I had built, brick by careful brick, the stability and connection I had craved since childhood. During these years, contact from my biological family was sparse and predictable. Each attempt followed the same pattern: an email or voicemail around holidays or when Stephanie reached another milestone, always phrased as though no estrangement existed. Hazel, Stephanie got the lead in a regional theater production. Thought you'd want to know. Or your mother and I are celebrating our 35th anniversary next month. You're welcome to join the dinner. I maintain firm boundaries with minimal responses. Thank you for letting me know. I won't be able to attend. No explanations, no openings for negotiation. Each exchange reinforced my conviction that I had made the right choice in stepping away. The brief communications left me unsettled, but increasingly less devastated as years passed. Until the day a cream-colored envelope arrived in my mailbox, addressed in unfamiliar calligraphy, bearing a Portland return address I recognized immediately. The envelope sat unopened on our kitchen counter for 3 days. Tyler noticed but didn't press, giving me space to approach it on my own terms. Edison, sensing my unease, stayed closer than usual, his warm weight against my feet as I finally slid my finger under the seal that Thursday evening. The invitation was elaborate thick cardstock with gold foil lettering announcing the upcoming nuptials of Stephanie Mitchell and Andrew Harrison at the Woodcliff Estate in Portland, 6 weeks hence. A smaller card requested the honor of my presence at the rehearsal dinner as well. Nothing in the wording acknowledged 9 years of silence. The presumption was breathtaking. Well, Tyler said, examining the invitation after I handed it to him wordlessly, that's certainly bold. I laughed despite myself. The Mitchell family specialty, pretending everything is fine when it's fundamentally broken. Before I could decide how to respond, my phone rang with a Portland area code I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hazel? It's Mom. Kimberly Mitchell's voice, unchanged by the years, brisk and expectant. Did you receive Stephanie's invitation? The familiar knot formed in my stomach, a Pavlovian response to her tone. Hello to you too, Mom. Yes, it arrived today. Wonderful. We'll need your RSVP by next week. The caterer is very particular about final numbers. I've put you at the family table, of course. Will you be bringing a guest? I don't know if you're seeing anyone. The casual presumption stunned me into momentary silence. 9 years of no meaningful contact, and she was discussing seating arrangements as though we'd spoken last week. Mom, I said carefully, I haven't decided if I'm coming. The silence on her end was brief but weighted. What do you mean? Of course you're coming. It's your sister's wedding. The sister I haven't spoken to in 9 years, I pointed out. The family that didn't visit when I was hospitalized. I think my attendance isn't as of course as you're suggesting. Her sigh carried familiar notes of exasperation. Hazel, families have disagreements. That's normal. But in important moments, families should stick together. Stephanie wants you there. Does she? Because she hasn't told me that herself. She's incredibly busy with wedding preparations, my mother countered. You know how stressful these events are. What followed was the first of many calls over the next 2 weeks. My mother employed every tactic in her arsenal. Guilt. It would break your father's heart if you weren't there. Manipulation. People will ask questions if you're absent. And false reconciliation. This could be a fresh start for all of us. The truth emerged during our third conversation, when her carefully constructed patience finally cracked. Andrew's family is very prominent in Boston business circles, she snapped after I again declined to commit. His parents have certain expectations about this wedding. They're expecting to meet Stephanie's entire family, and it would be extremely awkward to explain your absence. So this isn't about reconnecting, I clarified, a weight lifting as the real agenda became clear. This is about appearances for Andrew's family. Don't be difficult, Hazel. This is important to your sister's future. The Harrisons are very traditional about family. They've been asking about you, and we've had to be vague. It's becoming uncomfortable. The recruitment campaign expanded beyond my mother. My father called for the first time in years, his approach more direct. Your mother is upset about this wedding situation. Can't you just come for the day and help us out? You don't have to stay long. Emails arrived from aunts and uncles I hadn't spoken to since high school, all with the same message. Family obligations supersede personal feelings. Ancient history should be forgotten for Stephanie's special day. The most unexpected contact came from Stephanie herself. A text message appeared one evening. "Hey sis, heard mom's been calling about the wedding. Hope you can make it. It would mean a lot. Steph." 11 words after 9 years of silence. No acknowledgement of the estrangement, no questions about my life, just the expectation of compliance for her benefit. I showed the message to Tyler, who had witnessed the growing pressure campaign with increasing concern. "You know you don't owe them this, right?" he said, his arm around my shoulders as we sat on our porch swing. "Attending would be a kindness, not an obligation." I nodded, leaning into his steady presence. "I know, but part of me wonders if I'm being petty by refusing. Maybe I should be the bigger person." Tyler considered this carefully before responding, one of the qualities I most valued in him. Being the bigger person doesn't mean letting people pretend they haven't hurt you. Sometimes it means having enough self-respect to say, "This relationship isn't healthy, and I won't pretend otherwise." My mother's calls grew more frequent and increasingly desperate as the RSVP deadline approached. During one particularly tense conversation, I finally asked the question that had lingered for years. "Mom, do you even understand why I stopped talking to you and Dad?" Her hesitation spoke volumes. "You were always so sensitive, Hazel. You took everything personally." "I was in intensive care," I reminded her, my voice steady despite the old hurt rising. "You chose not to come because Stephanie had an interview. That interview was crucial for her career. And the doctors said you were stable. And that's exactly the problem. In a direct competition for your attention, even when my life was potentially at risk, Stephanie's convenience won. It always did. I stopped calling because I finally accepted that I would never be a priority in my own family." My mother's voice hardened. "That's simply not true. We always treated you girls equally." The blatant rewriting of history was the final confirmation I needed. "Mom, I have to go. I'll let you know about the wedding by the deadline." The pressure campaign reached its peak when my parents announced they were coming to Seattle to discuss the situation in person. They booked flights and a hotel without consulting me, then presented it as a fait accompli, expecting me to rearrange my schedule for their convenience. I agreed to meet them for dinner at a restaurant rather than our home, a boundary Tyler strongly supported. "If it gets uncomfortable, you can leave more easily," he pointed out. "And it keeps them from establishing your home as a place they can show up unannounced in the future." As the confrontation approached, I had one final therapy session with Dr. Lang. "What are you hoping will happen when you see your parents?" she asked. I considered the question carefully. Part of me still wants them to acknowledge how they treated me, to really see me, maybe for the first time. And if they don't, then I need to accept that they can't give me what I've always wanted from them, and decide if I can have a relationship with them on different terms, or no relationship at all. Dr. Lang nodded. "That sounds like clarity, Hazel. Not a happy clarity perhaps, but an honest one." The evening of our dinner arrived with Seattle's typical spring drizzle. I arrived early, choosing a table with clear sightlines to the exit. When my parents walked in, the years seemed to fall away. My father's hair grayer but his posture the same, my mother as immaculately put together as always. For a disorienting moment I was 18 again, desperate for their approval. Then Tyler's voice echoed in my mind. "You don't need their validation to know your worth." I straightened my shoulders and stood to greet them. The dinner began with strained pleasantries. My parents commented on Seattle's weather, asked surface-level questions about my job without listening to the answers, and studiously avoided any mention of the 9-year gap in our relationship. It was as though they believed if they didn't acknowledge the estrangement, it might retroactively cease to exist. After appetizers arrived, my mother predictably steered the conversation to its intended purpose. "About Stephanie's wedding," she began, arranging her silverware with precision. "We've reserved a hotel room for you and, Tyler, is it? The rehearsal dinner is Friday evening, very intimate, just family and the wedding party." The presumption that my decision had already been made ignited a familiar frustration. "Mom, I haven't agreed to attend yet." My father entered the conversation, his tone placating. "Hazel, We've come all this way. Can't we put the past behind us for one weekend? For your sister's sake. That's exactly the problem, I replied, keeping my voice level despite the emotion building beneath it. You want to put the past behind us without ever acknowledging what that past contained. You're asking me to pretend everything is fine when it never has been. My mother's expression tightened. This attitude is exactly why. She stopped herself, but not before I caught the implication. Why what, Mom? Why you always favored Stephanie? Why you never showed up for my important moments? Please finish that thought. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. My father broke it with a sigh. Hazel, no one favored anyone. We loved you both equally. You were just always so independent. You didn't seem to need us the way Stephanie did. The revision of history was so complete it momentarily took my breath away. I didn't need you? Or I learned not to ask because you were never available when I did. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. This is ancient history, Hazel. Stephanie is getting married to a wonderful young man from an excellent family. All we're asking is that you show up and act like a part of this family for 2 days. Is that really so difficult? The question hung between us as our entrees arrived, steam rising from plates no one immediately touched. In the pause, I considered what I truly wanted from this interaction, from these people who shared my DNA but had never truly known me. I need to ask you something, I said finally, and I need an honest answer. If Andrew's family wasn't a factor, if there was no external pressure to present a united front, would you have invited me to this wedding at all? My parents exchanged a glance that confirmed what I already knew. My mother recovered first, her social polish reasserting itself. Of course we would have. You're Stephanie's sister. But you wouldn't have made this effort, I pressed. You wouldn't have flown across the country to convince me to attend. My father shifted uncomfortably. Hazel, the Harrisons are very traditional people. Family is important to them. They've been asking about you and it's become awkward. So this isn't about reconciliation or even about Stephanie's happiness. This is about appearances for her future in-laws. That's not fair, my mother protested, but without conviction. Isn't it? In 9 years, neither of you has made any genuine attempt to understand why I stepped away. You haven't acknowledged any role in the breakdown of our relationship. Even now, you're not here because you miss me or want to repair anything. You're here because my absence would be inconvenient to explain. For the first time that evening, something like genuine emotion crossed my father's face. That's not entirely true, Hazel. We have missed you. We didn't know how to reach out after so much time had passed. A small crack appeared in my resolve. Then why not say that? Why not start with "we've missed you," instead of immediately discussing seating arrangements as though nothing happened? My mother interjected, her tone sharpening. Because every time we try to move forward, you insist on dredging up old grievances. At some point, don't you think it's time to let it go? This childish grudge-holding isn't becoming. And just like that, the momentary opening closed. That's where you're wrong, Mom. It's not a grudge. It's a boundary. And your inability to respect it or even acknowledge why it exists is exactly why I've stayed away. The remainder of the dinner passed in tense conversation about neutral topics. As we prepared to leave, my father made one final appeal. Hazel, please. Just think about it. For the family's sake. I looked at him. Really looked at the man who had been a background figure in my childhood, always deferring to my mother's management of family dynamics. I'll give you my decision tomorrow. That night, back in our home, Tyler listened as I processed the dinner conversation. They still don't get it, I said, pacing our living room while Edison watched with concerned eyes. They still think I'm being difficult or holding a grudge, not protecting myself from people who have consistently shown they don't value me. What do you want to do? Tyler asked simply. I sank onto the couch beside him. Part of me wants to go just to keep the peace, to be the bigger person. But another part knows that would be betraying myself, pretending the past doesn't matter when it shaped everything about who I am. Those sound like the options they've presented, Tyler observed. Either attend and validate their version of reality, or don't attend and be the difficult one. But maybe there's a third option that honors your truth while still showing maturity. This insight led to a long night of discussion. Together, we created a list of pros and cons for attending the wedding. The pros were few but significant: potential for genuine reconnection, closure on unanswered questions, the chance to meet Andrew and form my own relationship with my sister's partner. The cons were numerous and equally weighty. The emotional toll of pretending everything was fine, the likelihood of being sidelined during family events, the implicit validation of years of neglect. As we talked, memories surfaced unbidden. Christmases where Stephanie received thoughtful gifts while I got generic items, school events my parents missed while never missing hers, the hospital room where I lay alone except for Alicia. The pattern was too consistent, too defining to simply set aside for a weekend of pretense. I called Alicia the next morning, needing the perspective of someone who had witnessed the family dynamic firsthand during our college years. "They flew to Seattle?" she asked, incredulous. "For a wedding invitation but not a hospitalization? That tells you everything you need to know. But am I being petty by refusing? Should I be the bigger person?" Alicia's response was immediate and firm. "Hazel, you've been the bigger person your entire life. You worked harder, complained less, and asked for nothing while they focused elsewhere. You don't owe them your presence, especially when they're only requesting it to save face with the in-laws." Her certainty steadied me. Later that day, I drafted a response to the invitation, a brief, respectful note declining to attend but sending best wishes for Stephanie's happiness. I enclosed a check that would cover 2 premium place settings, ensuring my absence wouldn't impact their budget. To my parents, I sent a separate email. "After careful consideration, I've decided not to attend Stephanie's wedding. This isn't about holding a grudge. It's about acknowledging that we have fundamentally different perceptions of our family history and my place within it. Pretending otherwise for a weekend would be dishonest and ultimately harmful to everyone involved. I wish Stephanie and Andrew every happiness in their marriage." The enclosed gift is sent with genuine goodwill. If in the future you're interested in building a relationship based on mutual respect and acknowledgement of the past, I remain open to that possibility, but I won't participate in a performance of family unity that doesn't exist. With respect, Hazel. Sending the email brought an unexpected sense of peace. For perhaps the first time, I had clearly stated my truth without anger or blame, but also without compromising my hard-won boundaries. Whatever came next, I had remained faithful to myself. The response was swift and multi-pronged. My mother's email arrived first, a paragraph of clipped disappointment and thinly veiled threats about permanent damage to family relationships. My father called and left a voicemail that sounded more resigned than angry, asking me to reconsider but without the usual pressure. The most surprising response came from extended family members. My mother's sister, Aunt Diane, who had always been pleasant but distant, sent a lengthy email that revealed volumes about the behind-the-scenes conversations. "Hazel, I've respected your distance from the family all these years because frankly, I saw how you were treated growing up. What you may not know is that your mother has been telling everyone you're too busy with your important tech career to visit, creating the impression that you're the snobbish one who pulled away. Now that the Harrisons are asking questions, the real situation is becoming harder to hide. I thought you should know." This glimpse behind the curtain confirmed what I had long suspected. My absence had been explained away in whatever manner cast the most favorable light on my parents. The truth was inconvenient to the family narrative. 3 days after I sent my decline, my phone rang with Stephanie's number. The first direct call from my sister in nearly a decade. I answered with trepidation. "So you're not coming?" Her voice was tight, accusatory. No greeting, no preamble. "Hello to you too, Stephanie. No, I won't be attending. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is for me? Andrew's parents are asking all these questions about my only sister who supposedly can't be bothered to attend my wedding." The familiar dynamic reasserted itself immediately, my feelings subordinate to her convenience. "I'm sorry if my absence creates awkward conversations. That wasn't my intention." "Then what was your intention? To punish Mom and Dad? To ruin my special day?" I took a deep breath, determined to remain calm. "Neither. My intention was to be honest about where things stand between us. We haven't spoken in 9 years, Stephanie. Not a call, not a text until you needed something from me. That's not a relationship I can pretend exists for a weekend." A pause lengthened between us. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted subtly. I know things weren't always equal between us growing up. The acknowledgement, however minimal, stunned me momentarily. You knew. Of course I knew, she said, a hint of defensiveness returning. I wasn't blind. But what was I supposed to do about it? I was a kid too. I'm not blaming you for how they treated me, I clarified. Children don't create family dynamics. But as adults, we can choose whether to perpetuate them. You chose to maintain the status quo that benefited you. That's not fair, she protested, but without conviction. Isn't it? When was the last time you called me just to talk? To ask about my life? Did you even know I've been in a serious relationship for 4 years? That we bought a house? That I lead a development team for healthcare software? Her silence was answer enough. The Harrisons, she finally said, her voice smaller. They're very traditional about family. Andrew's parents have 3 sons, all married, all with children. They have these elaborate family gatherings. When they heard I had a sister, they were excited to meet you. Now Andrew's mother is asking all these questions I can't answer because I don't know anything about your life. For the first time, I felt a flicker of sympathy for my sister's position. I understand that's uncomfortable. But wouldn't it be more uncomfortable to have me there? A stranger essentially, pretending we're close. Maybe, she conceded. But now Andrew is asking questions too. About why I don't know basic things about my own sister. He doesn't understand how families can be so disconnected. What did you tell him? Her hesitation spoke volumes. I told him we grew apart after you moved away for college. That you got caught up in your career and gradually lost touch with us. The convenient narrative. Placing responsibility squarely on my shoulders. And did you mention that our parents missed my college graduation but never missed a single one of your performances? Or that they chose not to visit me in intensive care because you had an interview? Or that in 18 years under the same roof, they never once put my needs or achievements on equal footing with yours? You're exaggerating, she said, but without conviction. Am I? Think back, Stephanie. Really think. Was there ever a time when there was a direct conflict between something important to me and something important to you, and they chose me? The silence stretched between us, filled with unexamined history. Andrew says he wants to meet you before the wedding, she finally said, changing tactics. His family is coming to Portland next weekend for some pre-wedding events. He thinks it's strange he hasn't met his future sister-in-law. I live in Seattle, Stephanie. I have a job, responsibilities. I can't just drop everything because Andrew's family has questions. Can't? Or won't? The accusation in her tone was clear. This is important to me, Hazel. If you ever cared about me at all, you would do this one thing. The emotional leverage was so familiar it almost made me laugh. That's not how healthy relationships work. Care isn't proven by compliance. Our conversation ended without resolution, but it had shifted something fundamental in the dynamic. For perhaps the first time, Stephanie had been forced to confront the reality of our family history, rather than the sanitized version our parents had maintained. 2 days later, my doorbell rang on a Saturday morning. Tyler was at a cycling event, leaving me alone to find my parents standing on my porch, their rental car visible at the curb. We need to talk, my mother said before I could speak. May we come in? Despite my better judgment, I let them into our home. Edison approached them cautiously, sniffing my father's outstretched hand while maintaining distance from my mother. You've left us in an impossible position, my mother began once we were seated in the living room. The Harrisons are expecting to meet you at events starting next weekend. What are we supposed to tell them? The truth would be novel, I suggested, keeping my tone neutral. That we've been estranged for years and I've declined to attend. My father leaned forward, his expression more earnest than I remembered seeing in years. Hazel, I know things weren't always balanced between you girls growing up. My mother shot him a sharp look, but he continued. Your mother and I made mistakes. Stephanie needed more attention in certain ways, and you seemed so self-sufficient. We took advantage of that and it wasn't fair to you. The partial acknowledgement, however belated, momentarily robbed me of words. Before I could respond, my mother interjected. That's ridiculous, Jason. We did the best we could with two very different daughters. Hazel chose to pull away. She chose to cut contact. And now she's choosing to embarrass us in front of Andrew's family out of some misguided sense of victimhood. The familiar dismissal of my experience reignited the hurt I'd carried for years. This right here, I said, gesturing between us, is exactly why I stepped away. Even now, faced with the consequences of years of favoritism, you can't acknowledge it happened. You can't take responsibility for how your choices affected me. What choices? My mother demanded. What terrible crime did we commit that justifies ruining your sister's wedding? You consistently prioritize Stephanie's convenience over my essential needs, I replied, my voice steady despite the emotion behind it. You missed my graduation for her dance recital. You chose not to visit me in intensive care because she had an interview. You made me feel invisible in my own family for 18 years. And now you're angry that I won't perform visibility for strangers. My father's gaze dropped to his hands. The hospital, he said quietly. We should have come. I knew it then. But I didn't stand up to your mother. That was my failure. My mother turned to him, incredulous. Jason, what are you saying? I'm saying we've been pretending everything was Hazel's fault for so long that we started believing it. But it wasn't. We failed her, Kim. Consistently. And now we're asking her to help us save face without ever acknowledging that. The admission hung in the air between us. The first genuine acknowledgement of my experience I'd ever received from either parent. Before my mother could formulate a response, my father's phone rang. He checked the screen and answered with visible reluctance. Yes, Andrew, I see. Yes, she's actually right here. I understand. We'll call you back shortly. He ended the call. His expression grim. That was Andrew. Apparently, Stephanie finally told him the full situation after he kept pressing about meeting Hazel. Concerned about what he's learning about our family dynamics. My mother's face paled. What exactly does that mean? It means he suggested postponing the wedding until, in his words, he can better understand the family he's marrying into. He's particularly troubled that we never told him Hazel was estranged. The silence that followed was broken by my mother's phone chiming with a text. She read it, her composure visibly crumbling. Stephanie says Andrew's parents want to meet with all of us, including Hazel, before making any decisions about their financial contributions to the wedding. I almost laughed at the absurdity of the situation. So now you need me to not only attend the wedding, but also convince Andrew's family that we're a functional unit worthy of their son? This isn't funny, Hazel, my mother snapped. Your sister is devastated. Years of planning could fall apart because you refused to put aside old grievances. My father surprised me by placing a restraining hand on my mother's arm. Kim, stop. This isn't Hazel's fault. We created this situation over many years. We can't expect her to fix it in a weekend. As they argued, my phone buzzed with a text from Stephanie. Everything is falling apart. Andrew says he doesn't know if he can marry into a family with so much unresolved dysfunction. This is all your fault. The familiar pattern of blame settled over me like an old, uncomfortable sweater. For a moment, I nearly yielded to the lifetime of conditioning that made me responsible for everyone else's feelings. Then I remembered Dr. Lang's words from years earlier. You are not responsible for managing other people's emotions or fixing situations you didn't create. I looked at my parents, my father showing the first glimmers of recognition, my mother still clinging to denial, and felt an unexpected wave of compassion. They were trapped in patterns they couldn't even see, still trying to force reality to conform to their preferred narrative. I can't fix this for you, I said finally. I can't pretend we're a close-knit family for Andrew's benefit. And I won't lie about our history. If Stephanie and Andrew's relationship can't withstand honesty about her family background, perhaps postponing the wedding is the right choice. My mother stood abruptly. This is unbelievable. After everything we've done for you. Kim, my father interrupted, his voice firmer than I'd ever heard it. Enough. We should go. As they prepared to leave, my father paused at the door. For what it's worth, Hazel, I am sorry. Not just about the hospital but about all of it. I failed you as a father. The simple acknowledgement, decades overdue, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Thank you for saying that. After they left, I sat in the quiet of my home, Edison's head heavy on my lap, processing the seismic shift in our family's tectonic plates. The carefully maintained facade had finally cracked, revealing the dysfunction beneath. Whether anything healthier could grow in its place remained to be seen. Later that evening, I received a brief text from Stephanie. Wedding postponed indefinitely. Andrew says we need family counseling before moving forward. Hope you're happy. I wasn't happy, but for perhaps the first time in my relationship with my family, I was at peace with the boundaries I'd established and maintained. In the days following my parents' visit, silence descended from Portland. No calls, no texts, no emails, a familiar pattern. But this time tinged with something different. Previously, silence had been used as punishment, a way to communicate disapproval without direct confrontation. This silence felt more like a collective exhale, as though our family system needed to recalibrate after decades of delicate fiction had been dismantled. Tyler provided steady support as I processed the tumultuous events. Are you okay? He asked the evening after my parents left, his arm warm around my shoulders as we sat on our back deck. Surprisingly, yes, I realized. For the first time, I feel like my experience was actually acknowledged, at least by my dad. It doesn't erase what happened, but it validates that I wasn't imagining it all these years. The freedom in that validation was profound. No longer did I need to question my perception or wonder if I had somehow manufactured the unequal treatment that shaped my childhood. My father's simple "we failed you" confirmed what I had always known but doubted in my darkest moments. 2 weeks passed without contact from my family. I focused on work, on my relationship with Tyler, on the everyday rhythms that had built my stable adult life. Then one evening, an email notification appeared on my phone from an address I didn't immediately recognize. Hazel, it's Stephanie. Created a new email account because I needed to write to you without Mom and Dad knowing. Can we talk? Just us. The message was so unexpected I showed it to Tyler, who raised his eyebrows. That's interesting. Are you going to respond? I considered the question carefully. I think so, but I'm not sure what to say. After drafting and discarding several responses, I finally sent a simple reply. I'm open to talking. Would you prefer email or phone? Stephanie chose a phone call, scheduled for the following evening. When my phone rang at the appointed time, I answered with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Hi, she said, her voice smaller than I remembered. Hi, Stephanie. How are you doing? A humorless laugh. Honestly, not great. The wedding's officially canceled, not just postponed. Andrew says he needs to reevaluate our relationship in light of everything. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and meant it. Despite our complicated history, I never wished unhappiness on my sister. Are you? She asked, a hint of the old accusation creeping in. Then she sighed. Sorry, that's not fair. This isn't really about you. Or at least, not in the way Mom wants to make it about you. What do you mean? A pause, as though she was choosing her words carefully. After you declined the invitation, Mom went into damage control mode. She told the Harrisons you were estranged because you'd had some kind of breakdown years ago and rejected the family. Andrew overheard and started asking questions. When I couldn't answer basic things about your life, he got suspicious. Eventually I told him everything. Everything. I echoed. About how Mom and Dad always favored me. How they missed your graduation for my recital. How they didn't visit you in the hospital. All of it. Her voice caught. He was horrified. He said it explained a lot about certain things in my personality, my need for constant validation, my inability to handle criticism. He said he needed time to think about whether he could be with someone who had benefited from that kind of dynamic, and never questioned it. The raw honesty was unexpected. That must have been difficult to hear. It was. It is. But you know what's worse? He's right. I did benefit from it. I saw how they treated you differently. And I never said anything because it worked for me. A shaky breath. I'm not a good person, Hazel. You were a child, Stephanie, I reminded her, surprising myself with the instinct to comfort her. Children don't create family dynamics. They adapt to what exists. But I'm not a child anymore. I've been an adult for a decade and never once reached out to my only sister. Never questioned why you stepped away. I just accepted Mom's explanation that you were difficult and selfish because it was easier than looking at the truth. The acknowledgement was so complete, so unexpected that for a moment I couldn't respond. In the silence, Stephanie continued. I started therapy last week. The therapist asked about my family background, and when I described our childhood, she had this look, like she was trying not to react but couldn't quite manage it. That's when I realized how messed up it all was. How messed up I am because of it. Therapy was life-changing for me, I offered. It takes courage to look at these patterns. Did it help? With the anger, I mean. 'Cause right now, I'm so angry at Mom and Dad. For what they did to you, yes, but also for what they did to me. They made me the center of everything. And now I don't know how to exist without constant external validation. Andrew says I'm emotionally dependent in ways that aren't healthy for either of us. The conversation continued for nearly 2 hours, covering territory we had never explored together. For the first time, we spoke as adults examining a shared past from different perspectives. There were difficult moments when old patterns threatened to reemerge, but we managed to navigate them with more awareness than I would have thought possible. Before we ended the call, Stephanie asked tentatively, "Do you think we could talk again sometime? Maybe regularly? I'd like to get to know my sister." "I'd like that," I said, realizing I meant it. "Maybe we start with monthly calls and see how it goes?" It was a small beginning but a genuine one, the first real connection we had established as adults. 2 months after that initial conversation, I received a formal envelope in the mail. Inside was not a wedding invitation but a card from Stephanie. Starting therapy to work on myself. Would appreciate your support from a distance as I figure this out. The journey is harder than I expected. I sent back a simple care package, a journal similar to the one that had helped me process my own therapy journey, a soft throw blanket for comfort during difficult sessions, and a card that read, "Healing isn't linear, but it's worth it. I'm proud of you for doing this work." My parents remained largely silent during this period. My father sent one brief email acknowledging that he was also beginning therapy to understand patterns I've perpetuated. My mother maintained her position that the family breakdown was primarily my responsibility, though Stephanie mentioned she had reluctantly agreed to attend a few family counseling sessions. 5 months after the wedding cancellation, Stephanie called with news. "Andrew and I are trying again," she said, a cautious optimism in her voice. "We've been in couples counseling. And I've continued my individual work. We're planning a much smaller ceremony for next spring. Just close friends and immediate family." "I'm happy for you," I said sincerely. "It sounds like you're building something healthier." A pause. "We both really want you to come, Hazel. Not for appearances or because it's expected, but because I'd like my sister there. But I understand completely if you're not comfortable with it." The invitation, offered with respect for my boundaries rather than an expectation of compliance, touched me deeply. "Thank you for understanding that it's complicated. Can I think about it?" "Of course. Take all the time you need." After discussing it thoroughly with Tyler and Dr. Lang, I decided to decline attending the ceremony but sent a thoughtful gift with a heartfelt note. Stephanie's response was gracious. "I understand completely. Maybe someday we'll be ready for that step. But there's no rush. I'm just grateful we're talking again." The wedding eventually took place in a small garden ceremony. Stephanie sent photos afterward. She looked genuinely happy, more grounded than I remembered her. Andrew seemed kind in the images, his arm protective around her shoulders. They had built something new from the ruins of the cancelled spectacle, something that appeared more authentic. My relationship with my parents remained complicated. My father made genuine efforts to connect, acknowledging past mistakes without expectation of immediate forgiveness. We established a tentative email correspondence, sharing small updates about our lives without pressure for more. My mother struggled more with the new reality. Her occasional messages still contained hints of the old dynamic, subtle implications that family harmony rested on my willingness to forget, rather than her willingness to acknowledge. I maintained firm boundaries, responding when I had the emotional capacity, but stepping back when old patterns emerged. The most profound change wasn't in any external relationship, but in my internal landscape. The validation from my father and sister, however belated, released something that had been tightly coiled within me for decades. I no longer questioned my perception or wondered if I had somehow deserved the unequal treatment. The solid foundation I had built with Tyler, with my chosen family of friends, and with my own hard-won self-worth remained unshaken. Dr. Lang noted the shift during one of our now monthly check-in sessions. "You speak about your family with compassion now, but without the old pain," she observed. "That's significant progress." "I think I've accepted that my parents did the best they could with the emotional tools they had," I reflected. "That doesn't excuse what happened, but it helps me understand it wasn't about my worthiness. They simply couldn't give what they didn't have themselves." This understanding, that their limitations weren't a reflection of my value, was perhaps the most healing realization of all. I could acknowledge the pain of my childhood without allowing it to define my adulthood. I could maintain boundaries without harboring resentment. I could choose which relationships to nurture based on current health rather than past history. Tyler and I continued building our life together, eventually welcoming a daughter we named Grace after my grandmother. As I held her, I made silent promises about the kind of parent I would strive to be, one who saw her clearly, valued her uniquely, and loved her unconditionally. The family patterns that had shaped me would end with me. They would not be her inheritance. Stephanie met her niece when Grace was 6 months old. During her first visit to Seattle, watching my sister hold my daughter, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: lingering sadness for what we had lost, gratitude for what we were slowly building, and hope for a relationship that, while never simple, might eventually be genuine. "She looks like you," Stephanie observed, gently touching Grace's cheek. "She has your eyes." "And Grandma Grace's smile," I added. "The one person who always saw me clearly." Stephanie met my gaze, her expression solemn. "I see you now, Hazel. I wish I always had." It wasn't a perfect healing. Some wounds run too deep for complete restoration. But in that moment, with my daughter connecting us across the divide of our shared history, I felt something shift, a letting go of what could have been in favor of what might still be possible. The family we choose often heals the wounds left by the family we're born into. Through Tyler, through our daughter, through friends who had become as close as blood, I had created the belonging I had always sought. The broken connections of my past no longer defined my capacity for love or my worthiness to receive it. I look at my beautiful daughter now and think about the power we all have to break generational patterns, to choose different paths than those laid before us. Have you ever had to establish boundaries with family for your own well-being? What helped you find peace with difficult family relationships? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to hear more journeys of healing and growth. Remember that your worth isn't determined by others' capacity to see it clearly. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you strength in your own path to wholeness.